Josh Hennig hanging out with you till 2 o'clock today. We're doing a lot of NFL talk on the show. That's why I'm glad to have Russell Baxter on board. You can follow him on Twitter at Bax Football Guru. You've seen him on NFL Network's Good Morning Football. He's also a writer. You can check out all of his articles on his Twitter page at Bax Football Guru. Russell, how you doing today?
I'm doing terrific, sir. How are you? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. So, we've been talking about a lot about the NFL playoff picture, and I wanted to start with you. We know that it looks like it's going to be the Steelers and the Patriots in the AFC, the top two seeds, the Eagles and the Vikings as the top two in the NFC. What one team in the AFC and NFC lower tier of teams, after those first two, do you think has the biggest chance to upset the apple cart for the top seeds?
Well, I don't know if Pittsburgh and New England are set in stone in terms of the top two seeds. I know they're both 11-3, Josh, but it's hard to ignore the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know the immediately knee-jerk reaction will be, well, what about Blake Bortles? Well, what about Blake Bortles? Blake Bortles played pretty efficient football. Had some stumbles early in the season. So did the Jacksonville Jaguars. But it's a team and a quarterback that has gained confidence. Go back to the beginning of the season. In fact, you go back to the beginning of the season with all these teams in the league that are in playoff position. What were we saying about New England after 4 games? What were we saying about the Steelers after they lost to the Bears in Chicago? What were we saying about the Jaguars after they lost to the Jets? But they have evolved. Their defense is extremely – they may be the most physical team, Josh, in the entire NFL this year. And Bortles has gotten the job done. It's not like he's had Leonard Fournette the entire time. And Chris Ivory has done his job, but he has gained confidence as a passer. He has cut back on the turnovers, and I give credit to Doug Marrone and someone in the front office that we forget about, Tom Coughlin, who's had a big influence on this team. So I don't know quite yet. I understand what you're saying, and I feel better about what you're saying about the NFC in terms of Philadelphia. And Philadelphia already has one of the off weeks. I mean, they're one of the top two seeds, so
right.
We're still seeing what happens with Minnesota. And you got to like their chances. They beat New Orleans. They beat the Rams. So they beat Atlanta. They have a lot of those head-to-head wins, so they likely will be. But I'm not quite sure yet to dub a Steelers-Patriots AFC championship game.
You mentioned about Doug Marrone with the Jaguars, and I was saying earlier that if the Titans don't make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if John Robinson decides to clean house, because that team has really underachieved offensively, and that defense has looked really porous, even with some nice players on the defensive side of the ball. And it seems like you see with Marrone in Jacksonville, you see what McVay has done with the Rams. It seems like the trendy thing right now is, the quote unquote quarterback whisperer. And I'm looking at a team like Tennessee, and they may say, we may need a more offensive minded guy to come in here and work with Mariota in this offense.
Well, I see it a little differently. I understand what you're saying, and listen. But let's not forget that the New York Giants and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went with a couple of quarterback whisperers 2 years ago, and it worked pretty well for 1 year. But look at what's happened with Ben McAdoo. He's no longer the head coach. Dirk Cutter and the Bucs are 4-10. I think what you need is an overall balanced and supporting cast. See, now I look at the Rams, and I look at they still have Les Snead as the GM and Sean McVay. But I look at the influence Wade Phillips has had. I look at Jacksonville, and I look at the influence that Tom Coughlin's had. In fact, it's funny, Josh. You will remember. Do you remember the Miami Dolphins won 1 game in 2007?
Right.
The next year they came back and went 11-5. Tony Sparano was the head coach,
and Bill Parcells was the guy who built that whole thing.
In the front office. To me, the Jacksonville Jaguars of 2017 are a clone of the 2008 Miami Dolphins. What do you think?
Well, it makes sense because Coughlin comes from that Bill Parcells tree, too.
Right, and he's in the background, I'm sure to a degree. But you remember during the summer, Tom Coughlin made it abundantly clear that Blake Bortles was going to need to cut back on the turnovers. He was throwing picks in practice. Now, That being said, looking at Jacksonville's defense and their propensity for taking away the football, I now understand why he was throwing picks in practice. I mean, that's a heady defense that's gaining confidence. When they signed Calais Campbell, I mean, it's easy to say now, but that was a major credibility addition. It wasn't just a young player who they were bringing in and they gave a lot of money. He left the Cardinals after being a very big influence on the team, steady performer, great at blocking kicks, not just sacking the quarterback. Now you surround him with all these young kids. To me, Jacksonville is a fascinating story and somewhat emulates the 13 Seahawks and the 2015 Denver Broncos if they can get on a similar roll.
I mentioned the Titans earlier. You know, the Titans got a tough road to get to the playoffs. They got to play the said Jacksonville Jaguars last week of the season. They got to play the Rams tomorrow. The Bills got to play the Patriots. Whereas the Ravens, their team has got a much easier schedule. They got the Colts and they got the Bengals the next 2 weeks. And you look at a team like the Chargers, they got the Jets this week, but it's a road game. So of those 4 teams, the Titans, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Chargers, who are your favorites to make it in?
Well, I mean, I apologize because you were asking me about the Titans before I went on one of my usual, 3-minute
it's
answers
all good.
And so on. The point I was trying to make about Tennessee is think about how they have played this year, Josh. You look at Minnesota, and you've heard the words Case Keenum use the words complementary football. Okay, look at what the Eagles did last week. Down 20-7, they were backup quarterback. Who bailed them out? A blocked PAT, a blocked punt, and a blocked field goal. Complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. Think about a game the Tennessee Titans have played this year where they seem like they were all on the same page. Offense fails, defense has been okay. Defense fails, offense has been just okay. They've never been quite in sync this year yet, despite having a winning record. Now, to me, that's the problem then. Now, as far as their playoff position, the one advantage that Tennessee has, and I don't know if it's going to come to fruition, is they beat Baltimore earlier this year. Okay? To me, the intriguing team is Buffalo. Okay? Can Buffalo go to New England and win on Sunday? Now, I can already hear, because I've already heard it, well, they've gone to Foxborough 2 of the last 3 years and beaten the Patriots. That is factually accurate. And one of them is when Bill Belichick was resting starters in 2014, and the other was when Tom Brady was suspended last year. So, look at those scores, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, the Bills also have a little added motivation, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. It'll be interesting. Again, Josh, have you ever seen a team not rush anybody, pass rush anybody, and put 11 people on the tight end?
Never.
Okay. I think I saw it in the longest yard when Burt Reynolds threw the ball at you-know-who and hit wherever,
right.
And then they all piled on him. We're not going to see that tomorrow, are we?
I would hope not.
No, I would hope not either. I'm not saying the Bills win tomorrow. I think that's a stubborn, hard-hitting game in a close game tomorrow because I think the Pittsburgh-New England game was an extremely physical football game. Even though the Patriots didn't lose, I think they might have lost some of the physical battles. But I mean, you look at the rest of the field. I kind of like the Jets to surprise the Chargers tomorrow. The one thing about the Chargers is, they have those spurts of not taking care of the football. We saw it last week. I think they had turned over the ball one time in 4 games, and one of them was by their backup quarterback who threw a pick 6 late in the Redskins game. And then all of a sudden, Philip Rivers was throwing picks in the fourth quarter last week. So, to me, the Chargers are a little too erratic as far as I'm concerned. So, if I had to pick right now with 2 weeks to go, I might be leaning Buffalo and Baltimore to get those last 2 spots.
And it's funny because I think Baltimore, if they make it in, I think they have the kind of defense, that could really frustrate some of these teams in the playoffs because, the Ravens, their offense has just been inconsistent all year. Guys can't stay healthy. Joe Flacco is the embodiment of a Jekyll and Hyde quarterback. But that defense, they got some pass rushers, and they can cause some problems for teams.
Well, they lead the league in takeaways, and it was something they weren't that great at a couple of years ago. And Ozzie Newsome has brought in guys who have a nose for the ball. Eric Weddle is a great example of that. I mean, you look at them, and those takeaways are key to their success. Very much like the Kansas City Chiefs, Josh. Kansas City last year led the league in takeaways. They had 33. This year they have 21. Where do you hear this number, Josh? They have 19 takeaways and 8 wins. They have 2 takeaways and 6 losses. When the Ravens lost to the Steelers 2 weeks ago, they gave up 39 points. They gave up over 500 yards passing to Ben Roethlisberger, correct?
Correct.
And they had 0 takeaways in the game.
It tells you what you need to know, that this team is so dependent on one aspect of that defense, is it not?
Right. And that's the thing. In other words, you look at Jacksonville, okay? They're among the league leader in takeaways, but they're also the leader in sacks. They're also the leader in fewest yards allowed. They're also the lead. In other words, if you are, it's like anything else. This is a team game, but if you are totally dependent on one aspect of your team, you're going to fail. And that's why you see teams like the Green Bay Packers without Aaron Rodgers, who covers up a lot of their wounds on defense. It's a shame. They finally got a running game going again this year with the 2 rookies, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, and yet their defense, I mean, listen, I know Aaron Rodgers got picked off 3 times, but they gave up 31 points, and people moved the ball against them. We watched the Cleveland Browns score 3 touchdowns on the Green Bay Packers. If you're a one-dimensional team, here's the thing. I look at the 5 teams that are already in the playoffs: Minnesota, Philadelphia, Jacksonville, New England, and Pittsburgh. They all play and have aspects of their teams that can make up for a bad effort from another department. Again, you can't underestimate what the Eagles did last week. They're down 13 points. They don't have Carson Wentz, and yet they get an efficient output from Nick Foles, but more importantly, 3 blocked kicks in one afternoon.
We're talking with Russell Baxter. You can follow him on Twitter at BaxFootballGuru. That's at BaxFootballGuru. Russell, flipping over to the NFC side of the playoff picture, to me the Falcons are an interesting situation because they're in control of their destiny. They win, they're in. It's not the most complicated thing. A lot of these other teams, like the Lions, they need other things to happen. The Falcons literally control it. And it's interesting because I feel like in some ways they embody the concept of it's better to be lucky than good. They should have lost to the Lions. They should have lost to the Bears. They've had so many things go their way, and I feel like that this team, they're dangerous because this is a team that went to the Super Bowl last year, and you could argue that they did it as less of a team because they didn't have Desmond Trufant last year. They have Desmond Trufant now. I think this team, if they get in the playoffs, they could be a very dangerous matchup because they're not just experienced, but they've found ways to win when a lot of other teams haven't.
Well, here's what's interesting. You make an excellent point, okay? If they run the table, okay, let's just say they win their last 2 games.
Right.
They're 11-5, correct?
Correct.
Okay. They were 11-5 last year. They were 7-5 at one point and then won their last 4 games. It's not like they had a banner year last year. So they conceivably could finish 11-5 for the second straight year, not nearly have the production from Matt Ryan that they did, but defensively they have been a lot better. I'm not saying they're great. They're a lot better than they were last year. I mean, they gave up over 400 points last year. They gave up 31 touchdown passes last year during the regular season. So when New England did what they did, it took the New England a little while, but it wasn't like this was a great Atlanta defense. Now, that being said, you've got not only a team that went to the Super Bowl last year in that division, you've got a team that went to the Super Bowl the year before in that division.
Right, the Panthers.
So, yeah, exactly. And you've got a New Orleans team that really has the right formula to do a lot of damage. Great running attack, aggressive defense. They've lost some people as they're at the last couple of weeks in terms of injuries and so on. and a quarterback who's been Super Bowl MVP. So I almost see what could happen there, Josh. I get the bad sensation for the Detroit Lions that they're going to be a 10-6 team that misses the playoffs.
Russell, you look at the entire NFC.
I'm not to interrupt you, and here's something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
If the Lions do finish 10-6, keep in mind that they lost to the Saints, they lost to the Panthers, and they lost to the Falcons.
Russell, I was going to say, how interesting is it that we came into this year, and I think a lot of people, they had a lot of questions about the Saints still. A lot of people thought the Panthers and the Falcons would be really good. But there were expectations that this division would be competitive. But I don't think a lot of us really believed you could end up with 3 teams making the playoffs from that same division. And it's fascinating because you see what's happened with the Seahawks. You see what happened with the Cardinals, with the Giants, with the Cowboys. And yet it's been the Saints and Panthers and Falcons who have just found the way to stay in it to the end.
Well, how do you make an accurate prediction without it being accurate? Okay? Here's my point. I actually picked 3 teams to come out of the NFC South this year.
But one of them was the Bucs, right?
One was the Bucs, and I did not have the Saints. So I got the 3 part, but obviously I didn't get the right part. So you saw what was happening with Tampa last year, 8-4 in their last 12 games. Sure. I figured they would get that momentum. And then when the Saints got off to their 0-2 start and gave up 65 points the first 2 weeks to Minnesota and New England, you're like, wow. I mean, even at times the Saints this year, when they had to rally to beat the Redskins in overtime, they have shown some cracks occasionally defensively. They're still a much better football team, but you're right. I mean, you look at the NFC playoff picture, okay, from a year ago, and who's the one team that you're confident and they could miss out if they lose to New Orleans tomorrow. I mean, it's not inconceivable that we could actually have 6 new playoff teams in the NFC from a year ago. Okay, think about who was in last year. Dallas and the Giants. Well, the Giants are mathematically out. Dallas is hanging on by a thread.
Right.
Okay. Atlanta, Green Bay, and Detroit. Green Bay is mathematically out. Okay. And Seattle, who's hanging on by a thread. So, I mean, we could have a clean slate when it comes to the NFC.
It's absolutely wild.
Yeah. But this is why people watch. This is why hope springs. I put a list out on Twitter this morning, Bax Football Guru, shameless plug, of the most improved teams from a year ago. Jacksonville's got 7 more wins than they did this year, and they still have 2 more games to play. You know, Carolina +4, the Eagles +5, the Rams +6. And again, there's 2 weeks to play, so those numbers could go up dramatically. You know, especially if Jacksonville sweeps the table, they could be improved by 9 wins, which would be tied for the 3rd most improvement in the history of the NFL in one season.
And don't forget that the Rams have almost doubled their offensive output from last year as well.
Oh, insane. I mean, and think about the droughts. Jacksonville hasn't been in the playoffs in 10 years, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams haven't been in the playoffs since 2004. I mean, the Eagles were there in 2013. Pittsburgh and New England, have steady reservations. But you look at some of the other teams that could get in, and even some of the teams that could get in, Josh, they haven't won a playoff game in a long time.
Right. Hey, Russell, I always appreciate the time. Before I let you go, just bring it back to what's going on here with the Eagles. We talk a lot of Eagles here on the station, naturally as the Eagles radio network home. And, this is the only team that's undefeated at home. And they're going to get at least 1 home game, potentially 2 in the playoffs. But without Carson Wentz, this is going to be more of a team effort. This defense gave up 29.3 points in the last 3 games, obviously all on the road. But the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Giants, one of them is an offensive juggernaut in the Rams. The Seahawks have been up and down. The Giants, talk about a team that's been an absolute mess. How concerned are you about the Eagles' defense? Yes, this is a better team at home, but giving up all those points in 3 straight games is not a good look.
No, it's not a good look, but let's also consider this. They were playing 3 straight road games. and if you think that doesn't have a little wear and tear, even if you stay out on the West Coast, okay, to do Seattle and Los Angeles. Other teams have done similar things where they have back-to-back road games. What you look with the Patriots had to play 5 road games in 6 weeks. They wound up winning 4 of them. Okay, they lost at Miami on a Monday night, but that third straight road game has its effects. Look at Minnesota. Minnesota played 3 straight road games. Their third road game was at Carolina 2 weeks ago. What happened? They gave up a season-high 31 points. So sometimes it's not who you play, it's when you play them and the circumstances surrounding them, okay? More importantly, and you talked about the defense and so on, the Eagles had a 3-game road trip and managed to win the last 2. Their defense didn't play great, but their offense and defense bailed them out, and that's why the Eagles have been the best team in the league so far this year, because they have been the most complete team in the NFL this year.
Russell, before 2017 runs out, I probably won't get a chance to talk to you too much before 2018, but I want to know right now, who is your favorite to make it to the Super Bowl?
Well, besides myself, let me think. I think it's kind of hard to ignore. To me, the Eagles are a prohibitive favorite. Okay, I know people are going to scratch their head on that, and I'm not disrespecting the other teams. I just think they have too many complementary pieces to fall back on, even if they have a subpar effort. Okay, if I had to just pick off a whim, I'm going to say Philadelphia, Jacksonville.
And the thing with Jacksonville is, remember, they've already beaten the Steelers once this year, and you mentioned earlier that defense is elite.
Well, it's kind of hard to ignore what they did. And again, I'm not one of those people. My preseason Super Bowl pick was Seattle over New England, okay? I'm only doing this for you at the spur of the moment. I'm not one who likes to ordinarily do predictions like with 2 weeks to go and so on. There's something about Jacksonville I find intriguing. It's like they're laying in the weeds, and they're being allowed to lay in the weeds because of one person that no one is really paying attention to. Okay? Think about it, and these teams are playing each other tomorrow, Josh. There's been more credit given to Jimmy Garoppolo the last 3 weeks as Blake Bortles the last 3 weeks. Okay? Now, I just want to point something out. Both teams have won 3 in a row. I'm going to give you a quick quiz here, Josh. How many touchdowns have the San Francisco 49ers scored during their 3-game winning streak?
I'm going to guess 5.
3.
I know they've won 2 of them by field goals, so.
Okay. How many field goals have the 49ers and Robbie Gould kicked the last 3 weeks?
At least 12, right?
15. But somehow Jimmy Garoppolo's getting all the credit. I think sometimes we get a little. I think Blake Bortles' first 3 years in the league are clouding how people are projecting the way he's playing right now.
Right.
I'm not putting Blake Bortles in the Hall of Fame. Okay, I think people need to look a little closer at how that offense is evolving. My goodness, they put 75 points on the board the last 2 weeks against Seattle and Houston. I don't care who you're dealing with. That's a lot of points. And it's not like they're, all of it is them running back picks. Blake Bortles is thrown for a lot of yards. I just think they're very sneakily laying in the background as everybody waits for Pittsburgh and New England to play each other. And a lot of times it just doesn't play that way.
Yeah. You can follow him on Twitter at BaxFootballGuru. NFL historian, researcher. You've seen him on TV, and he always joins me here whenever I ask him to here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Russell, I appreciate you always coming on. Hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll catch you in 2018.
Happy holidays to everybody's listening, and Josh, I want to thank you in advance for the BMW you're sending me for Christmas. Happy holidays.
I thought you wanted a Mercedes.
No. You got to check. When I didn't write LOL. I wrote BMW. Okay.
Take care, my friend.
All right, take care.